Jason has shared, and that's been absolutely wonderful. And I met Jim and Gisela quite a few years ago. I was their pastor for a time, and they really have a very precious testimony that kind of ties up everything that we've shared so far. It's going to bless you, I know. And so we're just going to hear from them. This is Jim and Gisela Jones. God bless.
Yes, I'm looking forward to what I have got to say. I've really no idea what's going to come out of here. Yes, Lord. I'll say a little prayer, Lord. Lord, you are so good to us, and I pray that you are especially good right now, that I can read all this writing, and that people will benefit from what I have to say, and then Gisela will take her turn, and then I pray similarly for her, Lord. Thank you, Lord, for looking after us so well. All right, we are the Joneses. We've been here quite a while. I'm from the UK, Gisela is from Poland. We got married in 1965 and we came to Canada in 66. I first met Gisela in 61, didn't I? And I got to tell you about Gisela. I know a thing or two about her. Yeah, well, you know that Poland is next to Germany. There's a border between the two of them, and that border has whisked to and fro for hundreds of years. And when Gisela was born, it was presently Germany. And then, of course, there was the war, and then it became Poland again. So Gisela spoke German in those days, but then she went to Polish school, and she actually learned Polish and Russian and all those other things that people do over there. Yeah, but she lived in a little village. We've seen the village on Google Maps and actually looked at it. It's a real cruddy village, isn't it? And it was a good idea for you to leave that place. And she left it in 56, wasn't it?
57.
57, yeah. She even had to pay the guards to let them out of Poland. Isn't that amazing? Anyway, and then she came to Germany. It was bribery. Yeah, and then she came to Germany. So that's when I met her. When I met her, I thought, she's something special about her. And there has been ever since, Lord. So when it came to, was it 65, we got married. We got married in England. We got married in the registry office. The reason for that was that we couldn't get married in church in Germany because the residence requirements were so long. I had to think about a month to live in Germany before you were allowed to marry her. If you came to England, you get married in one day or so, and that's what we did.
You got married in church.
And then later on in the year, we got married in church, but already we had the marriage license, so it was okay. When we first got married, of course, we had no children. But it didn't take long for them to show themselves. And our first, we'll just talk about parenting in general. We hadn't got a clue how to parent. I mean, you're so green, but that wasn't the word I was looking for. You expect everything to go right. And you thought, my parents said, we can do it, no problem there. But of course, when it happens, you find that you haven't a clue how to do it. And you think, well, when a problem comes up, how did mum and dad do it? But really, when you think of how mum and dad did it, they were no good at it either. You know, they were great parents, but they usually get real mad at each other, and there were the times when teapots would go flying. You know, And when you think of it, it shouldn't have been that way because my dad was a quiet fellow, and he just liked to sit and read his paper. But my mum would get really excited and say things which led to these
Arguments.
volcanic eruptions. Yes, so, and you think, well, why were they like that? Who taught them? Of course, it was their parents who had an idea either. Parents never have an idea how to bring up your kids. So we were in the same position. Yeah, my parents were great people. But they were. I mean, they had the right. They worked hard. We came first, the kids, I think we did. Yeah. What was I going to say?
To our girls.
Yeah, we've got it. Oh, Gisela says you can move on to our girls. And that's probably appropriate.
Thank you.
Yeah, now the thing is about your kids, you get them, and you think that, well, of course, they're beautiful little kids, and they're blank sheets, we'll bring them up. They'll do it, we'll get it right for once after all these generations of Joneses. But of course, they're not like that at all. Michaela, the eldest, was born in 67. Annette was born in 70, and Emily came in quite a bit after that in 79. That was not unexpected. After the first two, we thought, it takes a while to look after kids, and eventually you sort of get the hang of it. But then we thought, well, things are going rather quietly now. We ought to increase and multiply. So that's why Emily came along, and it took quite a while to multiply. So eventually she did come along. Now, when Michaela, the first one, was born, it was a difficult birth. We'd only been in Canada a year, and we'd asked around, and we said, asked who's a good doctor for this sort of thing, and we got a name, and he was good until the birth. When he liked to play golf.
He did.
Yeah. So when Gisela was in the hospital, straining away, and the water went early, there he was on the golf course playing. And he waited till he'd finished his game till he showed up, and Gisela was in there at least 12 hours straining away, and Michaela had a difficult birth. And it has affected her ever since. She's... Well, what's funny about that?
Just the way you
No,
present
if you
it.
had Michaela, you would know it's not a laughing matter. Now, Michaela had a really hard time, and she still has a hard time.
What's wrong with her?
What's the you say?
Tell what's wrong with her.
Yeah, what was wrong with her? One was
Brain damage.
it was brain damage because of the long birth. You see, she was starved for oxygen, and she's never really recovered from that. But it showed itself when she went to school. She had difficulty making friends. Teachers tried to give her special help, but it wasn't help at all. And all her life she's had trouble getting on with people, and I'll let my sweetheart tell you all the details of this.
Okay.
But it was not a wonderful ride through life, and it hasn't ever been a good life through. But Annette has been excellent. Emily has been excellent. But in spite of all their excellence, they rarely agree with us. Yeah, they do their own thing, and they do it with... I'm proud of it, the way that they do things. Emily, for example... Pardon?
Proud of Michaela.
Yeah, we're proud of Michaela too, of course we are. She's done amazingly
Yeah,
well.
I'm too proud.
Maybe you want to
Okay.
finish it.
and I talk more detail, darling. Okay, what happened was Michaela. She eventually changed her name to Michela because nobody could pronounce her name properly. She was either Michaela or Michaela, and she said, that's not my name. Now, anyway, she was eventually diagnosed with having Asperger's as well as bipolar. As well, she has a stomach difficulty, which is called Crohn's disease. And she has multiple psychological problems. That's what we were told, and Leonard and Carie know about that. So it isn't easy to speak about all that we went through and we are still going through. Yet, where was God? At that time, we became born-again believers because somebody witnessed to us, and God came through 100%, and we said, okay, God, we're going to follow you. So things became much easier after that, and we were able to introduce the girls, first the two girls, to the Bible and to daily prayer. And we were at the time in the Catholic Church, so the girls had their sacraments. They had their communion and their baptism and everything else, so we just knew that. And the Lord kept us for another 12 years in the Catholic Church. And we were just saying, Lord, when do we leave? We are not really fed here, but we were there, and God used us. We had small groups, and at one point, we were able to lead 12 people to Christ in the Catholic Church. So I am looking back at that, and I say, thank you, Lord, that you kept us there and that we didn't give up and run away. So that's part of that part. Okay, let's go back to Michela now. I call her Michela because you all can pronounce that. She wanted to be a vet assistant. Now, with Asperger's, I don't know if you guys know about that, but some is very high functioning. She can memorize things. She knows stuff like, it boggles my mind when I talk to her. She has a marvelous memory. God gave her that. She too became born again when we did. She committed her life to the Lord, and so did Annette. And later on, of course, Emily was not even born then. She was the one who was our special gift. So anyway, when she wanted to become, she loved animals always. She wanted to be a vet assistant. So at the time, there was a course in Centralia. I don't know if any of you know about that. Yeah. So she signed up and she went there, and all of a sudden, we didn't hear from her. And we found out 6 weeks later that she had run away from Centralia, and she had gone into London, came back into London, and did not notify us at all, and we just couldn't understand. So anyway, she ended up moving in some unsavory place where she was sexually assaulted. And, I had great trouble forgiving that person for what had happened to my precious girl. So anyway, long story short, I make it shorter, but anyway, she ended up at the London Psychiatric Hospital. She was there for 6 months. Yes, because she was threatening suicide and all sorts of stuff that was just terribly, terribly mixed up. At that time, how was the Lord with us? Well, he was with us, and we had some people who interceded and prayed for us. And by then, we were still in the Catholic Church, weren't we? Anyway, we had this wonderful friend who said, I will go into the LPH and I will do Bible study with her. Now, she had the wonderful intention, but Michela didn't want her to come. So, but that was not necessarily the hardest time of our life, but it was one of them. We used to go, every week we used to go and visit her at the hospital. And we used to take Emily with us, who by that time was born and was little. And fine. And she was always saying, "Mom, why do I have to go where all the crazy people are?" And we tried to encourage her that the crazy people are people. It doesn't matter what they're going through. So anyway, our youngest daughter, and looking back now at the work of God, and now it's good hindsight, we saw that our youngest daughter developed compassion. Like you can't develop without hardship. You can't develop compassion. So Emily now, and I must give a plug in for her, she runs a company who helps senior citizens with technology. And I believe the seed was planted at that point where she went and saw her sister and saw the other people in need. So anyway, that's just as far as Emily. Now, this period, so eventually, Michelle, of course, came out of the hospital and she moved into another unsavory situation somewhere in East London where she had a room, but we had finally found out where she was. Yet God, I tell you, God is so amazing. He popped her there. Across the street was a Christian woman. And Michelle kind of developed a friendship as much as she can develop friendships. And that lady's name was Estelle. And Estelle would say to her, "This is not a good place where you live. Why don't you move in with me?" So Michelle finally agreed, and she moved in with Estelle. So then Estelle would be in touch with me. So I found out, but anyway, God has this thing, and now I'm looking back, I see the weaving. You know, like we always hear, God weaves, He weaves a carpet, and those strands were underneath, and on top comes a beautiful picture. So anyway, Estelle, and then she finally went and got little jobs. She would deliver papers, and she would do small things, and she would come home once in a while. But because she was on welfare, she had very little money, of course, and that was our way of helping her. And I would go out and get gift certificates to grocery stores because we couldn't do anything else. If you're on welfare, you have to declare what you're getting, even gifts. You most probably all don't know because you're all sheltered. You never experienced anything like that. So anyway, so we would reach out to her with love and provide what she needed at the time. But one thing about her, she would always want to have a job. She worked in a sheltered workshop, and she delivered newspapers, and it was just touching to us that she would do that. But anyway, now I'm going to tell you the good story, the absolute amazing thing that God has done for us and for her. Anyway, this went on for a long time, okay? This was 20 years of agony, of almost no relationship, of constant prayer, of holding her up, of trying to carry on in spite. Yet God, boy, don't give up on God. If you have a kid out there, never give up. And I know Leonard and Michelle, his son Joel, they had a lot in common. So anyway, so Michelle, I need to tell you a little backdrop. I used to do income tax for people for many, many years. So I had some experience. And one day I thought, Lord, why have I not got a disability credit for my daughter? She certainly is disabled. So we applied, and we got a disability credit on her income tax, not that she could do anything with it, but it was transferred on Jim's income. So if you don't know tax, it's too boring to explain, but but God, He had His hand in this. I applied for this, and we're getting the notification from Revenue Canada, and since I've been in income tax for 20 years, I had never seen the refund that we got. People usually get at the most 5 years of a refund. Well, Michelle got 21 years of refund. No, sorry, 16 years, $21,000. Yeah, so all this got onto Jim's income tax, of course. So we got all this refund, and we called her home that day, and she came, and she was still her rebellious self, and I said, "Do we have some good news for you, and would you like to hear? But I want you to promise something when I tell you." And she said, "Okay, Mom, I'll promise." So I said, "Well, we've received some money for you from the government, but we will like you to agree that we can give 10% to the Lord's work from this." She said right away, of course, do that. She never even knew how much money came in. So anyway, and then we promised her, of course, we said, anytime you have special need or anything, the money is there for you. It is not for us, and we never used a penny of it. So anyway, this was God's amazing breakthrough. Now, if you think that God does not work with money, He does. He does. He does. We are living witnesses to this. So anyway, she became more kind with us, and she would come home when we asked her, and she met Leonard and Carie too, and she was just becoming what God wanted her to be gradually, in spite of all her diseases. So anyway, eventually, and that's another wonderful victory, she found herself a little church where people were very kind to her. And she was baptized there. Yes, she was baptized, and she became really on fire for God. Imagine that, after all this terror. So anyway, so then she said, "Oh, Mom, how about I go to Fancho? I think I would like to be a PSW." Well, we were floored and stunned. And we said, "Of course, you can go. I mean, here we can use some of that money to get you into Fancho College to take your course." So she went there, and she took the PSW course. And I have to laugh, Jim with all his degrees, and the other daughters with all their degrees, they never ended up on the dean's honors list. This little girl with all her difficulty ended on the dean's honors list. And I say, "God, this has to be you. It is you. You're blowing us away. Miracle after miracle after miracle." So anyway, she became employed, and another sweet bonus was when she was going from house to house. At one point, she went to Pastor Howard, from her company. They sent her to Pastor Howard, and she, of course, knew of Pastor Howard, and she had met him in the past. So it was close to his death. And she went there, and she said, she's quite bold. She's not shy. I wonder who she's taken after. After Jim. Anyway, she ministered to him whatever had to be done. And then she said, "Pastor Howard, could I massage your feet?" And he said, "Oh, yes, please." So I'm saying, "Okay, Lord, you have another..." I mean, if you don't think God has a sense of humor, you just look at us. Well, we went through. Yeah, He's got a sense of humor, and He wants us to laugh. So anyway, just a little bit from the back, after we got all the money, and she came and she said, "I want to repent before you." She said, "Please forgive me for all those years of anguish and agony I caused in your life." And we said, "Of course, darling," and we hugged her and held her, and everybody was crying and sobbing, and we had a real crying party. We did. So it was very good. And then Okay, the other thing I need to tell you too was that she loves languages. And when she was before she ran away in high school, she went to Quebec on a summer course. And she learned French there. And she's kept her French up all the time. And she said, Mom, I would so much like to go on a bus trip with you to Quebec. And, she just hadn't come out of that dark hole. And I said, okay, we can book one and we'll go on a bus trip. And we went on a 4 or 5 day bus trip to Quebec, and she just loved it. And so did I. And we had the best time together. There was no arguing, there was no fighting, there was lots of laughter, lots of prayer. And it was a total restoration after the breakthrough. So we're just being extremely, extremely grateful to the Lord for what He has done for her. Now today she's employed full-time. She is working at a nursing home, night shifts. And she is a giver and a tither. She never stopped giving that. And even when she came back to the Lord and she had very little money, she would always give her money to the Lord. And today she has quite a good income, amazing income for her. Today she is renting a car, and she is able to afford that, and she affords a nice apartment, not the subsidized where she used to be before. God provided. So now she does come home every week on Sunday or Saturday. This week it was Saturday because we are here today.